Imagine working your whole life and still never being able to stop. That's not a nightmare. It's the reality millions are facing. Hey, this is Coinrad, and today we're taking a time travel tour through retirement. The past, the present, and maybe even the future. Let's start with the past. The so-called Golden Age. Picture the 1950s. Elvis is on the radio, milk is 25 cents, and a decent house costs about as much as a used Toyota today. Retirement back then wasn't just possible, it was practically guaranteed. You worked one job, often at the same company for decades. In return, you got a pension. A pension was a magical little promise. Checks for life once you retired. No stock picking, no retirement apps, no oops, the market dipped. Just guaranteed income, courtesy of your employer. Homes were affordable too. In 1950, the median home price was about $7,500, roughly $90,000 in today's money. Compare that to today's $400,000 average, and suddenly the "I bought a house on one income" stories don't sound like bragging. They sound like time travel. And wages. They rose right alongside productivity. If companies did better, workers did too. You could raise a family, buy a house, and still put money aside, all on a single income. Try pulling that off today without winning the lottery. Retirement was also marketed like a lifestyle brand. Ads showed silver-haired couples in convertibles, smiling with perfect dentures, cocktails in hand. The message wasn't if you retire. It was when. Now, let's be clear. Not everyone was included in this golden glow. Women, minorities, and low-wage workers often got shut out. But for a huge slice of middle-class America, retirement was an expectation. Here's the kicker. This golden age wasn't some eternal law of economics. It was a historical accident. Post-World War II growth, cheap housing, strong unions, and a massive middle class. A perfect storm that made retirement simple. But perfect storms don't last forever. And when the economy shifted in the 1970s, the cracks started to show. The present. If the 1950s and 60s were the golden age of retirement, the 1970s flipped the script. What used to feel automatic suddenly turned into a gamble. Wages stopped keeping up with productivity. Workers were making more stuff, generating more profits, but their paychecks flatlined. Meanwhile, housing, healthcare, and education all strapped on rocket boosters. Costs soared while incomes stood still. The math no longer added up. And those magical pensions? They started vanishing. Companies swapped them for 401ks. On paper, a 401k sounded empowering. You control your own retirement. In reality, it was like a restaurant handing you raw ingredients and saying, "Congrats, you're the chef now." Suddenly, workers were in charge of investing, managing risk, and timing the stock market. No pressure. The difference was huge. Pensions were promises. 401ks are homework. They shift all the risk from the company to you. Pick the wrong funds? Retire during a market crash? That's on you. The numbers paint a scary picture. 1 in 4 Americans has zero retirement savings. Among people in their 60s, the median retirement savings is around $200,000. Sounds like a lot, until you realize that spread over 20 or 30 years, it's basically ramen noodles money. One hospital stay, a market dip, or a few years of inflation, and poof, it's gone. And yet financial planners smile and say, you'll need at least $1 million to retire comfortably. $1 million. For most people, that sounds like monopoly money. They might as well tell you to retire on Mars while you're at it. And that's why more people are working into their 70s and beyond. Not because they're chasing passion projects, but because they can't afford to stop. It's not just economics, it's psychology. Humans are built for short-term rewards, not 40-year planning. Saving for retirement is like skipping Netflix tonight for a promise of free cable in 2065. The brain just doesn't buy it. So people undersave, overspend, and hope things will somehow work out. Spoiler, they usually don't. The result? A retirement crisis. Flat wages, sky-high costs, dead pensions, and a system that expects every individual to become a Wall Street strategist just to have a shot at quitting work someday. So does that mean retirement is officially dead? Not quite. But it does mean the future will look very different. The future. So if the past was golden and the present is a mess, what does the future of retirement look like? Here's the twist. Retirement isn't gone. It's just being redefined. The old dream of quitting at 65, buying a Florida condo, and golfing for 30 years, that's fading. The new dream is about flexibility, freedom, and control. For some, that means semi-retirement. Instead of stopping cold turkey, you downshift. Work part-time, freelance, teach, or finally launch that passion project. You're not retired in the old sense, but you're not chained to the grind either. You keep income flowing while buying back your time. Others pursue FIRE, financial independence, retire early, save aggressively in your 20s and 30s, invest every spare dollar, live frugally, and you can buy your freedom decades early. Sure, it's intense. Think roommates, rice and beans, and biking everywhere. But it proves retirement is still possible if you're willing to sacrifice. Then there's geo-arbitrage, a fancy way of saying move somewhere cheaper. A $2,000 budget in the US might barely cover rent, but in Portugal, Mexico, or Thailand, it can buy a comfortable lifestyle. For some, the future of retirement is global. But maybe the biggest shift is psychological. Retirement used to mean never working again. Now it's about control. Having enough savings and income to choose when, how, and why you work. It's not about golf carts and endless cocktails. It's about freedom of choice. And honestly, that's not a bad upgrade. The Golden Age promised certainty, but it was built on a very specific set of circumstances that no longer exist. The future promises flexibility. Less guaranteed, yes, but more adaptable. So, will most people never retire? If we're talking about the old version, guaranteed pensions, predictable checks, and a one-way ticket to Florida, probably not. But if retirement means freedom to live life on your terms, that's still possible. The old dream was simple: work, save, quit. Today, it's complicated. But the truth is, you don't need $1 million or a yacht. You just need enough freedom to control your time. That's the real endgame. This is Coinrad. Hit subscribe and stick around for more stories about money, markets, and the madness they create.